Michelle, we good to go?
You are good to go, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Governor Phil Murphy here, coming at you from the Brick City in Newark, New Jersey. I'm incredibly honored to be joined by a dear friend and a national hero and a personal hero, the founder and chair of Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams. Thank you, Stacey, for beaming in from the great Peach State, Georgia. I'm also joined on the Jersey side by some terrific leaders, Senator Nia Gill, Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker, our great Secretary of State, Tahesha, the terrific CEO and dear friend of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, Ryan Haygood, and the New Jersey League of Women Voters President, Nancy Hedinger. To each and every one of you, thank you so much for being with us today. So today, I don't say this lightly, New Jersey reminds the nation that our democracy is made stronger when we make it easier for the people's voices to be heard, that our democracy wins when we open the doors of our polling places wide instead of slamming them shut. The law that I'm signing in a few minutes today, allowing in-person machine voting in our regular polling places, will enhance our residents' right to vote. This follows our successes working with the legislature in implementing both one of the nation's strongest automatic voter registration laws and online voter registration, our work to restore the right to vote to tens of thousands of residents on probation or parole, and a prohibition on using incarcerated residents in legislative redistricting. Not just for Stacey's benefit, which she knows all too well, but for all of ours as a reminder, I cannot overlook that this early voting bill passed our legislature the same day that the governor of Georgia was signing a law restricting the rights of Georgians to vote, even making it a crime to give a voter waiting in line a bottle of water. It is incredulous that the response to those who claimed that last year's presidential election was rigged against all evidence to the contrary are now doing their damnedest to openly and unapologetically to rig elections by suppressing voter rights. They couldn't prove the big lie in any court of law, so instead they're writing the big lie into law. In Georgia, again, as Stacey knows better than the rest of us, is only the most visible example. But other governors and other state legislators in places like Arizona, Texas, Florida, even across the Delaware and Pennsylvania, not the governor in that case, but the legislature, among dozens of other states, are considering new ways to suppress one of the most fundamental rights of citizenship. They claim to love our Constitution, but only if they get to define who the we is in We the People. Amazingly, right here, some members of the New Jersey legislature have introduced bills to restrict the voting rights of our residents. Let me be perfectly clear. Through the work of everyone here, among so many others, these bills will go nowhere except into the nearest recycling can. The bills that move forward must only be those that further the right to vote. By example, for allowing for same-day on-site registration and voting, or allowing 17-year-olds to register and vote in our primaries if they turn 18 by the general election. I got one of those in my household, I might add. If there's one thing I know about Stacey Abrams, it's that adversity only makes her work harder. I know that she and Fair Fight are going to do everything to see that these attempts to undermine our American values are not only defeated, but that these new voter suppression laws are erased. And we need Congress to step up as well and to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act at the federal level to reassert the American value that every vote is sacred and every voter's right to cast that vote must be protected. And meanwhile, on behalf of all of us working hard, including our leaders in both the legislature and advocacy groups, our cabinet, everyone else who stands with us, New Jersey will proudly show the path forward. I spoke to Stacey literally the day after she was so instrumental in winning, and we won both of those Senate races in Georgia. And I said, Stacey, I think The timing on the legislature is that they're going to move early voting this year, and I wonder if you'd be willing to join us virtually, because I assumed it was still going to be virtual when we signed that bill. And she hit the bid, as they say, immediately. She said, absolutely. We've gotten to know each other over the past number of years. We were supporters and huge fans when she ran for governor. And think of how different Georgia would be had she won. And I cannot thank her enough again for everything she does, including for spending a few minutes with us today. I know she's going to jump after she says a few remarks, but please help me welcome a crusader, a hero, and a dear friend of so many of us in the great state of New Jersey, the one and only Stacey Abrams.
Thank you so much, Governor Murphy. Thank you not only for this invitation, but thank you for your leadership on voting rights. As you mentioned, New Jersey has been leading the way with automatic voter registration, with having the foresight and the humility to understand that redemption for those who've come out of our prisons and jails must include a reintroduction into the full measure of citizenship. As someone who's not only fought for voting rights, but has been working hard on the census, your actions taken to address prison gerrymandering are crucial, because we cannot build a stronger society if we do not include the needs of every person. And that's the fundamental premise of democracy. Not that we get everything we want, but that we deserve to have a say in the direction of our nation, in the direction of our states, and in the direction of our communities. And when democracy is undermined by laws that we have seen passed, not only in Georgia, but in Iowa, and laws that are under consideration in Arizona, in Texas, in New Hampshire, in Florida, in 43 states across this country, we are seeing an onslaught, an attack on democracy. And there was one Arizona representative who actually explained it. Essentially, he said that they don't want every vote to count. They don't believe that quantity matters, that it's about the quality of the vote. Well, my question is, how do you qualify the utility of a vote? I believe that citizenship in the United States of America is a premise that we must stand on, and it says that we have the right to be heard. We are going to lose some of the elections we want to win, and we're going to win some of the elections we never thought could be true. But we are always, always as a nation stronger when every voice is included. And that is why this work is so critical. In-person early voting says to Americans who have to work on a schedule that isn't based on an agrarian economy from the 18th century that their voices matter. It says to that mom working that third shift that if she can get some time off to go and cast her ballot, she might be able to move herself out of minimum wage into a full-time job that pays her enough to live a good life for her and her family. It says to that person who is a frontline worker who doesn't know when they're going to be on call, that if they can cast their ballot, there may be relief on the other side. In-person early voting is one more vestige of a country that believes in the democracy it espouses, but more importantly, that believes in the people that it shelters. You see, what we saw on January 5th in Georgia was the election of the first African-American and the first Jewish senator from the state of Georgia. And yet what we saw on January 6th was intended to be a repudiation of an election, a repudiation of an entire system. And we did not let that domestic terrorism work then, and we should not let it work now. And I am so excited to be looking at New Jersey, knowing that New Jersey is taking us in the right direction. But my eyes will never leave Georgia, will never leave the states that still need this type of leadership and this type of support. Because anytime you have a governor willing to win elections by stealing the voices of their people, they do not deserve to hold those jobs. But it's up to us, the voters of America, to stand together, whether we're in Georgia, in Texas, or in New Jersey, to say that we are one nation under God, and that we are one nation whose democracy should not depend on our geography. And so to Governor Murphy, to the state legislature, to the Secretary of State, and to all the allies who made this possible, you have my heartiest, not only congratulations, but you have my gratitude, because you are showing the way to a better democracy and a better future for us all. Thank you so much.
Stacey, bless you. Before you go, I repeat what I said to you privately. When I sign the bill, you're going to get an official Phil Murphy New Jersey pen. We will sanitize it and send it down to you. Thank you for everything. You know what's a shocking reminder? You and I, when I referenced that phone call after we won the 2 seats in Georgia, you and I spoke the morning of January 6th.
Good.
Before all hell broke loose a few hours later. just extraordinary, the juxtaposition of that call between those two extraordinary victories and the hell that rained down in the Capitol only a few hours later. I know you got to go. Thank you so much. We look forward once we start doing things in person. We have the red carpet out for you. We'd love to have you back up in Jersey. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay strong, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a treat. And another treat. It takes a village and it takes leadership in both chambers. And we have two outstanding leaders with us today. This bill does not get to me without their leadership. Please help me welcome. I'm in Essex County, Senator, Essex County Zone. Please help me welcome Senator Nia Gill. Nia?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for signing the bill today. I'd also like to thank my Assembly sponsor, Assemblyman Zwicker. And of course, a thanks to Stacey Abrams and Fair Fight for their courage and perseverance in their fight for democracy. And thank you to all of the advocates. For over a decade in New Jersey, as part of a nationwide agenda of voter suppression, opponents have fought against early in-person voting. Despite our legislature passing in-person early voting twice, and the bill being vetoed twice, we continued the fight to expand access to voting. And today, with the governor's signing of this legislation, early in-person voting will become law in New Jersey. We know that preventing voter intimidation, passing early in-person voting, and all of the other expansions that the governor talked about will ensure our fundamental right to have our voices heard. There are few rights more important than a citizen's ability to vote. Our accountability over government, opportunities to better our lives, and the chance to elect our representatives are all dependent upon our ability to access the ballot. As states nationwide enact laws to suppress the vote like Georgia, here in New Jersey, we stand committed with you to the fight for the fundamental right to vote. Thank you.
Senator, so well laid out. Bless you and thank you for your leadership on this and for so many other arenas in which you have led the fight. Bless you. And by the way, you have a pen coming your way too. Again, sanitized all due to COVID protocols, etc. Thank you so much. It takes both chambers. You've been a great leader in this in the Senate, and you mentioned him in the Assembly. It is my treat and honor to welcome a leader in the fight in the Assembly chamber. Please help me welcome Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker. Andrew.
Thank you, Governor. I'm delighted to be here today with everyone, participate in this virtual bill signing. And those virtual, I'm grateful to be here and share, if you will, some electrons with just the wonderful leader, Stacey Abrams. I know she had to go, but from the bottom of my heart, I have to say thank you to her team for her tireless organizing and advocacy in Georgia. We all know the difference that it's made in our democracy. When I first decided to run for public office in 2015, I was motivated by two things. One, for people who know my background in science would expect, was the climate crisis. But the other was specifically around our elections, and in particular, what seemed to be voter apathy, the sentiment that my vote doesn't matter, but at its core is voter suppression. I won that election in 2015 by 78 votes out of more than 34,000 cast, became the first Democrat ever elected to my district, and it was a real life lesson that every single vote matters. And so today, as we begin the process of early voting in New Jersey, I am so honored to be here with Senator Gill, who has worked tirelessly for over a decade to get us to this very point. I also have to thank my Assembly colleagues, second and third primes of this legislation, Joe Danielson and Verlena Reynolds-Jackson, along with everybody who sponsored this bill. And while I hesitate to name names because I'm inevitably going to leave some people out, I want to thank people who have worked behind the scenes to get this bill over the finish line. Petra Gaskins and James Cacciola, my chief of staff and legislative director, respectively. Staff on the Assembly side, Scott Snyder, Seth Hahn, a variety of election officials from around the state, and Governor, from your staff, I have to point out the incredible work of Stephanie Wozunk. I can't tell you how happy I am that New Jersey residents will finally have the chance to vote early in our elections starting in November by machine, as you said. And we all know on the day the New Jersey Senate was sending this bill to Governor Murphy, the state of Georgia was sending a very different bill to their governor. The conversation about who is eligible to vote is as old as America itself. So let's be clear. The ongoing fallacy of voter fraud hides the true motivation of the bill Georgia passed and what other state legislatures are considering. That it is an attempt to disenfranchise voters, most often Black and brown voters, because some elected officials are more concerned about who votes for them than they are for ensuring that every eligible American is allowed to participate in our democracy. But quite frankly, this isn't just about Georgia or New Jersey. There are dozens of bills pending in state legislatures nationwide trying to curtail who can vote and when. So make no mistake, we are in a fight today to save our democracy, and we are fighting to ensure that every single American has a right to participate. We recognize that not everyone can vote on a single Tuesday in November, and voters should not be penalized. Early voting isn't novel, other states have it, but it's important for us to be having this conversation today, right now, because we are at an inflection point in the choices we're going to make as a country. Does every vote matter? Does every voice matter? Will we make it easier for every American to exercise their right to vote, or will we silence and suppress their ideas, their concerns, and their drive for a better America? I know my answer. Today, New Jersey is showing its answer. Thank you so much, Governor. Really appreciate your leadership. To everybody on the call and to everyone who got us to this point.
Andrew, so well done, so well laid out. Likewise, you and Nia, extraordinary leadership on this. You mentioned, I want to make sure I say this, because on the Senate side, in addition to Senator Gill, Senator Linda Greenstein and Senator Shirley Turner, and you mentioned on the Assembly side, Joe Danielson and Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson, and they all rightfully deserve a shout out as well. in the theory that it takes a village, it takes even more than just great legislative leaders or a governor to sign a bill. It takes folks in advocacy organizations who stand up and lead shoulder to shoulder with us. And we've got two extraordinary leaders with us in that respect today. Please first help me welcome a guy who's really been with us on a lot of the voting reforms, particularly for parole, former incarcerated. I mentioned not to allow the jury rigging based on prison population, a whole lot of other really great steps forward that we've taken together. Please help me welcome the President and CEO of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, another great friend, Ryan Haygood. Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Governor Murphy, for the gracious introduction and for this chance to spend this historic moment with you and with the team. This is, to be sure, a big day for democracy. And I'm proud to join you, Governor Murphy, Secretary Way, Stacey Abrams, and our United Black Agenda Coalition and partners like the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, as you sign this bill, championed by Senator Nia Gill and Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker and other legislative champions to create early in-person voting in New Jersey. This is a big day for expanding access to the ballot. As was mentioned, starting this November, New Jersey will provide 9 days of early in-person voting, including 2 full weekends ending the Sunday before Election Day. This is also a big day for empowering the Black vote. For the first time in New Jersey, Black voters in the Garden State will be able to participate in Souls to the Polls, a long-honored tradition in Black communities where people first attend church services on Sunday, and then they take their souls to the polls to vote. Signing early voting into law in this critical election year, where every seat in New Jersey's legislature and the governor's seat are up for election, will allow us, the voters, to realize the power of our votes by holding our elected officials accountable. And we are able to see this precious moment due to our collective, our continuous, our on-the-ground advocacy with numerous partners, faith leaders, legislators, community members, and others that have championed expanding this fundamental right here in New Jersey. I'm especially thankful for the extraordinary work of my democracy and justice team here at the Institute, led by my colleague, Henel Patel, for their fierce advocacy in helping to make this moment happen. And as the governor mentioned 1 year ago, it was our collective advocacy that restored the right to vote to 83,000 people on probation and parole. That's a population near the capital, near the size of our capital city of Trenton. New Jersey had previously denied that right since 1844, which was the same year that New Jersey restricted the right to vote to white men in its constitution. Together, we also championed online voter registration to provide access to this precious right. More than 400,000 people registered to vote online for last November's election. And we all rejoiced as our Institute colleague, Ron Pierce, cast his first ballot in decades in November 2020, which, as a result of these voting rights reforms, had the highest voter turnout in New Jersey's history. This is what democracy looks like. But this is also not by accident, because as we all know, democracy is not self-executing. Democracy cannot expand itself, nor can it protect itself from shameful efforts to scale it back. We saw this last week in Georgia. To Governor Murphy's point, on the same day that New Jersey passed early voting, Georgia became one of the first states this year to pass sweeping new voting restrictions designed to suppress democracy. And to be clear, this attack on democracy occurred in response to voters in Georgia, and Black voters in particular, lifting into office the first Black senator and first Jewish senator from Georgia in history, and helping to elect the first woman, Black and Asian American vice president of the United States. At a time when state after state in America is attempting to restrict the right to vote in Jim Crow-like fashion, we, the collective we, are doing the opposite. Because we, the collective we, are not afraid of democracy. Our advocacy requires us to fight for more of it and greater access to it. That's why we're doubling down on it. Because when we fight, we win. And so today we both celebrate early voting, the historic passage of early voting, Governor Murphy's signature of that bill here in New Jersey, even as we advocate for more democracy expansion. And so we look forward to working with you, Governor Murphy, and our courageous legislative champions to expand democracy further, to limit police presence at the polls, to create same-day voter registration, to end the party line in New Jersey, and to restore voting rights to people in prison. All of this democracy reform will help us to realize our ultimate goal of making New Jersey a beacon, a national bright light for building an inclusive democracy. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Ryan, I love that. I love all of that, and I especially love not once but twice souls to the polls in November. 2 Sundays in a row. I love that. Bless you and thank you. I don't know where we'd be in all this whole agenda without you. Thank you, man. And another great advocacy organization and a great leader. Again, I don't know where we'd be without them. As president of the New Jersey League of Women Voters, please help us welcome another terrific leader and outstanding advocate for all that we're discussing and doing today, Nancy Hedinger. Nancy, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Murphy. And thank you to our sponsors and Ryan and my own personal shero, and I guess many of our sheroes, Stacey Abrams, for joining us for this wonderful occasion. The League of Women Voters believes that voting is a fundamental right, and all eligible voters should have an equal opportunity to exercise that right. Alongside our partners and other voting rights champions, we fight every day to protect the rights of New Jersey voters and to expand access for those who've been left out of our democratic process. We are proud that in the last few years, New Jersey has proven itself to be a national leader. As everyone has said, we've been defending democracy and upholding voting rights by enacting automatic voter registration, online voter registration, and restoring voting rights and access to people on parole and probation. And yes, we have more to do, but today's the day to celebrate. Today, New Jersey takes another huge step forward for the voters of our state. While some states are choosing to suppress the vote by rolling back voting rights and making it more difficult to vote, New Jersey's leaders and advocates understand that democracy thrives when it is inclusive and accessible. While some states assault our democracy by implementing voting regulations that specifically target young voters and Black, Latinx, Asian American, Indigenous, and other voters of color, New Jersey remains committed to moving forward toward a more perfect union, expanding access to the ballot for all. This is a victory for those New Jersey voters who hold multiple jobs with little time on one specific Tuesday to get to the polls. A victory for New Jersey families juggling caregiving of children and loved ones, especially during a pandemic. A victory for every voter who wants to have her voice heard, but requires flexibility and options to be able to cast her ballot. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey applauds the governor, Senator Gill, Assemblyman Zwicker, and the other co-sponsors, and the entire legislature for their recognition that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to voting. We are honored to be here to celebrate this historic moment. Thank you.
Nancy, thank you. I'm in a room, by the way, where the lights go out if nobody moves after 30 minutes, so I had to get up there briefly and move around a little bit. No offense to your great remarks. Deep appreciation for your leadership. And Nancy, thank you to you and your colleagues for being there so resolutely from moment one on this. Last but not least, my colleague, Tahesha Way, Secretary of State. In the teeth of a once-a-century pandemic last year, as Andrew alluded to, Tahesha oversaw, and Ryan mentioned this as well, an election that had the all-time high turnout in the history of our state. And that was not easy. And that's one of many accomplishments, being so dogged on our census, even in the teeth and the face of an administration hostile in so many respects to the inclusion of our great diverse state, but every step of the way. And you'll hear, even with this law, and I know Nia and Andrew have heard this, folks who are so-called opponents of this will claim we're not giving them enough time or we're not giving enough money. And while I will say this, we have nothing but sympathy and spirit of partnership with our 21 county clerks, and we will work doggedly through Tahesha and her efforts with each and every one of them. We know this is not an easy transition. We have complete confidence. And again, thanks to Tahesha's leadership and her team, that we both have enough time and enough money to implement this year for the November election. With that, please help me welcome my colleague, our terrific Secretary of State, to round us home, Tahesha Way.
Thank you, Governor. And I want to begin by commending you, our state legislature, and voting rights advocates like Ryan and Nancy for all that you have done to make in-person early voting possible. As New Jersey's Chief Election Officer, I want to welcome this opportunity to make our state even more voter-friendly. I am proud that New Jersey has broadened access to our democracy over the past several years, as all have mentioned, through no excuse vote by mail, automatic voter registration, and online voter registration. We've also expanded the electorate by allowing people serving parole or probation to register and vote. And last year, as the pandemic arrived on our shores, New Jersey, like every other state, had to figure out how to conduct a high-stakes presidential election in the midst of a global health crisis. We had to create an election plan that would prevent the pandemic from disenfranchising anyone while also keeping voters and election workers safe. Ultimately, we mailed ballots to more than 6 million voters, installed hundreds of secure ballot drop boxes across our 21 counties, and maintained polling places in every municipality for those who wanted to vote in person on Election Day. This was a Herculean effort led by our partners at the county level, the clerks, boards of elections, and superintendents, who truly are the front lines of our democracy. The result was one of the most secure elections in history, with the highest voter turnout our state has ever witnessed. In-person early voting will only strengthen our democracy further by providing voters with even more viable options. Hopefully, we'll see record turnout again this November. Now, just like managing the unprecedented 2020 general election, implementing in-person early voting will take significant effort and teamwork, especially from our county election officials. I truly applaud their tremendous work over the last year, and I want to thank them personally in advance for the hours and energy they will dedicate to making in-person early voting a reality this year. It won't be easy, but I know that my team in my office and our colleagues at the Division of Elections are already hard at work to support our partners as we get this done. These past few months, we've watched some states take unconscionable actions to restrict voting rights and disenfranchise the people they serve. Our responsibility as election officials is to secure fair and equal access to the ballot. As leaders and public servants, we shouldn't be working to limit democracy. We should be focused on expanding it. And here in New Jersey, as we add in-person early voting, we're doing just that.
Tahesha, thank you so much. And I want to underscore not just your leadership and your teams, but that spirit that I mentioned up front. We are committed through you and your team, and I am personally committed to working constructively in a spirit of complete partnership with our county clerks and election officials in our 21 counties, recognizing this is a big shift. And just because we believe strongly we have enough time and we have enough money does not mean that it is easy. And we know that, and we will be there for our clerks and election officials. And with that, we can get down to business. So with that, I'm going to hold up before you. There it is. This is Senate Bill number 3203, sponsored again in the Senate, led by Senator Nia Gill, along with Senators Greenstein and Turner. In the Assembly, Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker, along with Joe Danielson and Verlina Reynolds Jackson. A long list of co-sponsors, I might add. And the synopsis, which I always read, requires in-person early voting period for certain elections and makes appropriation. Importantly, we need to make sure we have the money. So on what would have been my mother's 106th birthday, let me start signing. First up, first pen. Again, these will all be sanitized and got to you. The incomparable Stacey Abrams. Next up, Essex County's own from the 34th Legislative District, Senator Nia Gill. Senator, God bless you. Congratulations. Next up, from the 16th Legislative District, on the Assembly side, the one and only Andrew Zwicker. Assemblyman, congratulations. The President and CEO of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, Ryan Haygood. Ryan, congratulations. Bear with me. Got a little bit of a fritz on the pen there. Again, we heard from her a minute ago, the president of the New Jersey League of Women Voters, Nancy Hedinger. Nancy, congratulations. And last but certainly not least, our extraordinary Secretary of State, Tahesha Way. With that, ladies and gentlemen, This is now the law of the land. God bless you all and congratulations.